Okay, guys, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I select land markets to mail and cold call to. It's not particularly complicated. First and foremost, I would say if you're living in a part of the country that's growing, I always like to start with big picture and then zoom in. If you're in Texas or in one of these southeastern states, I would stick with your backyard. Now, if you're living in Tampa, for example, I wouldn't mail Tampa to start. It's a major metro, very competitive, very expensive. I would go a couple hours outside of Tampa, or somewhere that you know. But it is helpful if you can do business somewhere that you have personal experience in, where you know people. That's how I started, but it's not essential. That's just my first recommendation. From there, let's just say that's not feasible. Maybe you live in Manhattan, certainly not going to be land flipping in Manhattan. What do you do? Well, I still like to start with where's the growth? Where are people going? Where is there legitimate demand for land? And of course, the Sun Belt, Texas, Colorado's slowed down, but it is still growing. Arizona, Nevada, the Southeast. There are parts of California that are growing, Pacific Northwest, etc. But I know the Southeast, so let's come down here. So we're on land that's been sold in the last 90 days. And it's January, so we just got through the slowest time of year. The last 90 days, especially with the election, were very slow. So if there's solds in that time period, there is certainly demand. Now, don't just go to Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa. Like I said, if you try and go into these major metros to start, you're setting yourself up to fail. It's not impossible, but it's hard, it's more competitive, and it's far more expensive. So I like going to markets that are a few hours outside of those areas, or potentially finding just a very, very in demand, hot, maybe beach town in Florida, and then going inland an hour or two. So I'll use an example here. If we come down to somewhere like Panama City Beach, and this is literally how I have done this for years and years and how it has worked. Again, if you're new, especially, I'm probably not going to go after $14 million pieces of land, 200 grand for 5,000 square feet, right? That's pretty expensive. But let's look inland. Let's look inland a bit. Let's follow the major highways. Okay, here's some clusters. All right, let's see what we have here. Right away, I'm just kind of looking at price point. Price point. Okay, these are super cheap. Let's see. All right, a little more expensive over here. Again, I'm just getting a general idea. Right away, it seems like there's clearly demand, but generally very cheap. 1 acre, something's off there. I don't think they got 225 acres for 7,000. 1 acre for 14, 17 acres. Okay. We don't want to go after anything quite that cheap, but let's just start. The first thing I like to always see once I have a potential area is the ratio of solds to for sale. So I'm just going to draw this whole area that we're kind of looking at here. And again, this is very preliminary. All right. So in the last 90 days, 201 pieces of land sold. Only 139 came on the market. That's pretty solid, right? Significantly more sold than came on the market. This isn't a perfect science, but it shows that there's demand. And then, all right, if we go to solds, I don't want to market to $5,000 lots. It looked like it was the larger acreage that's selling at higher price points. So let's do 2 acres minimum. What does that get the price points to? And of course, this isn't perfect. There's going to be different areas in here, but right away I'm seeing, okay, at 2 acres or greater, I'm not seeing anything super, super cheap. What do we got? 18. All right, so there's some cheap ones, but you also have to be aware that a lot of these areas you're going to see comps from other land flippers. So when I look at this really low price for 2.5 acres, I see it was never listed. It just sold. There's no pictures. This was bought off market. It's not a comp because it was never exposed to the open market. So that's just probably another investor. Okay, yeah. So right away, I'm seeing if we go 2+ acres for a new person, you're getting a decent price point. So if we look at last 90 days, 49 sold, 43 for sale. Okay, that's not bad. Let's see the whole last year. 12 months, 220, 100. Wow. Okay. Well, that's a great ratio in the last 12 months, right? Only 100 uh, came on versus 220 sold. And I understand this isn't a perfect methodology, right? Because if something's sold, it's not going to show up on the for sale. But this has worked well for me and given me a good point of reference. So this is somewhere I would consider. If I were brand new, this isn't one of the really well-known areas, right? Everyone's heard of Lehigh Acres and Palm Bay if you've watched any videos from any of the people in land. So it's a couple inland hours, maybe an hour inland from Panama City, not as well known, good sales ratios, decent price point without being crazy expensive. This is definitely somewhere I would dig into. From here, I would call some realtors, get a feel for the market, get a feel for what's driving the growth. Is it people that are commuting from here to Panama City that work in tourism, or people retiring? What's driving the growth? What are the trends that realtors are seeing? Call people, or excuse me, realtors that have sold lots in this area, and this could very well be a good area. And then, of course, you could kind of divide it into more homogeneous areas. Maybe you find out Round Lake is more desirable and Fountain is less, or whatever. But you can split this up a bit more intentionally. This is just a preliminary way of seeing, okay, this could be a good market. All right. So that's how I've found markets over the years. It's actually pretty simple. Now, from there, once you find places that are working, I like to expand outward in kind of concentric circles, right? So if I was doing business here, let's say it's going well, all right, then I would go out and around, further out and around, and focus on what's really in demand. And as you do business somewhere, that will become more and more clear. And so maybe it's 5+ acres in this market that's really in demand and it'll sell quickly. You don't really know until you're talking to locals, doing business and participating, right? And then beyond that, too, once you have trusted realtors, they can point you to new markets. A lot of my markets have just come from realtors who referred me to that place, especially in Florida, because I have a realtor that does all of Florida who's been great. So really simple, but that's how I have selected markets for years and years. It's worked very well. And more than anything, it's getting started and doing business when you really start to learn and niche down. So I hope that helps.